Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're in Masechtas Nedarim daf Dalid. We are going to begin on the very top of Dalid Amud Aleph, top line. So we were asking the question, when it comes to the dinim of Nedarim, we can understand how there is a possibility of violating Baal Ta'acher. A person delays in not bringing a carbon and not following through in the neder that they make. The question is, how about when it comes to Nazirus? Because once a person says that they're a Nazir, that's it. They're already a Nazir. So how is it shaykh that they could violate Baal Ta'acher? So we saw in yesterday's daf, perhaps if the person says, "Iftar min ha'olam ad shehi Nazir," that I'm not going to leave this world until I'm a Nazir, which basically means he could say, I'm just as long as I'm a Nazir at some point in life. So the din is that really at that time, Havili Nazir. At that moment is when he really should become a Nazir. And therefore, if he doesn't, therefore it's considered to be pushed off, and he's over Baal Ta'acher right away. So with this, the Gemara continues again on Daled Manal. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Omer, a different possible approach, Kigoyin de Nadar v'hu b'vesek varos, that he actually made this saying, I'm a Nazir, but he was in a cemetery. And of course, we know a Nazir cannot become Tami Mace. As we look in the Ran, so he says, you need to leave right away. Since he didn't leave the cemetery, which he was supposed to, so then he's viable Ta'acher. I can understand, according to the opinion, that you're not chal nazirus right away while you're tameh, so you're in the basic forest. So therefore, you're delaying the nazirus. Oman the amr ma'alter chayil mi ika Baal Ta'acher. There's no Baal Ta'acher if, according to one opinion, you're still a nazir, even though you're in a basic forest. Look in the Ran. The Rav Yochanan I ochel v'shasi yayin b'basic forest. Let's say you're eating grapes and drinking wine in the cemetery. Loki, you get malchus. The chayil lehan nazirus miyad. He holds that it doesn't matter. You're still chal. Nazirus is chal on you. Reish Lakish lo chayil lehan nazirus miyad. L'chi nafing me basic varis sa'uchachsel l'kabel. And he actually holds that you have to do be makabel upon yourself again once you leave the cemetery. So the question is, according to the Mandi Omer, that you're going to the Nazirus is chal upon you anyway, so then there's no Baal Ta'acher, you're still a Nazir. So that's question number one. V'od, ha'omer mar b'ravashi chayil Nazirus le'em altar. He says that it works right away. V'chi pligi le'inin malchus pligi. He says really the whole machlok is whether you get malchus. But really, everyone holds that it is chal. The question is, do we give malchus to this person for violating? So my answer is, he's violated the fact that he should have been tahar. Okay, so hold off on that. So again, you're a Nazir, but you didn't start your process being tahar, so you need to be tahar as soon as possible, otherwise you're chay Baal Ta'acher. So let's look in the Ran. So he says, Mishum hachi kamli b'Baal Ta'acher. So let's read this one more time. So if this is the case, Nazir shetimi atzmo b'mezid, a person makes himself tummy on purpose, Oiver mishum Baal Ta'acher, the Nazirus Tahara. So he's Oiver Baal Ta'acher, Nazirus Tahara, says the Ran. Kloimer, Kivandi Amr Tiafagav the Chal Nazirus, that he's a Nazir anyway, regardless. Kivandul Chayil Leha B'Tahara, because he wasn't pure. So Ika Baal Ta'acher, so Af Nazir Tahar, should be the same thing with Nazir Tahar. Shetime Atzmo B'Mezid, they became Tamei B'Mezid, Oiver Baal Ta'acher V'Laki. And he should get malchus in that situation. Okay, so the Gemara continues. Rav Acha bar Rav Ika Omer over another a third answer. His over Baal Ta'acher tig lachtai, regarding him getting a haircut. So one of the requirements at the conclusion of Nazirus is he cuts his hair. So if he doesn't do that, so he's violated Baal Ta'acher that way. Now, that when it comes to not having a haircut, that it's ma'akev, So says the Ran, Putihi. There was a Rabbanan. We'll see in Masechtas Nazir. The Rabbi Lezer Hadiksev Acher Yishta Hanazir Yain says after all this, then the Nazir can drink wine. Hainu Acher Kol Masim Kulam. Only after he does everything. The Hainu Tegalachas. So Varatzas Damim. So one of the things that he needs to do is he must cut his hair. If he doesn't cut his hair, then he cannot drink wine. So Rabbanan Miad Shehavi Karbanaisav Mutter B'Yayin. According to Rabbanan, even if he didn't cut his hair, he's still mutter b'yayin. So that's a machlokus over there. So one who says tiglachas makaves, so then that certainly makes sense that you're violated. That even if you didn't get a haircut, it's not ma'akiv, you can drink wine or you can bring a carbon. Nonetheless, mitzvah giluach miel loy mekayim, he wasn't mekayim the mitzvah of giluach. Okay. A fourth answer, that when it comes to a Nazir, he also has to bring karbanos. So therefore, it's possible if he didn't bring them, says the Ran, this whole notion, therefore you're only going to be chayiv just like a neder after the 3 regolim. If you didn't bring the carbon, so too over here you can be over by if you're supposed to conclude your naziros, but you didn't bring carbonos for 3 regolim. And from here nafkale it can be learned. Now that we can learn out from a hekesh. Mihacha nafkale. Mihasam nafkale. Ki dorosh yidrashenu. So when I seek out from you, these are referring to the bringing of karbanos. You would think that the din of Baal Ta'achar may not apply to a Nazir, because we're going to see maybe there's some kulos when it comes to a Nazir, so therefore maybe Baal Ta'achar doesn't apply, and therefore the chiddush is that no, even over here you're still going to be chayav Baal Ta'achar by Nazir. Okay. So my chiddush, what's unusual about the dinim of Nazir that you would make a distinction about Baal Ta'achar? You would think too. So when it comes to, says the Ran, it's lenient in that a neder may not be typhus, may not hold. Shim Omer, if you say the following quote, Chatas Nazir Olai, that I am upon myself to bring a carbon chatas as a nazir. Bu ain't a nazir, but he's just not a nazir. Lo omer klum. In that situation, he said nothing, because he needs to be a nazir to be able to bring the carbon chatas. V'hoyel v'kila, since that's a kula, because he, even if he said it, he doesn't have to bring it. So we're lenient. No, you don't have to bring it. So sakad lamina lo leikum leheba bal ta'acher. You would think that he doesn't have to, there's no Isser Baal Ta'achar either. So where it says, what do you mean? We know when it comes to Chatas Chaylev, She'ein matfisa b'neder, v'oiver Baal Ta'achar, says the Ran, Choymer kol ha'chatos t'hachi mikri. A regular Chatas is called a Chatas Chaylev. So kulhu Chatas Chaylev isbahu hach kula. Every carbon Chatas has this kula. V'il hachi, so the question is, you can't say this is unusual. Oh, okay, fine. If you're not a Nazir, you can't bring a Chatas. But also, if you didn't violate anything, you don't bring a Chatas either. So, but nonetheless, we know by a Neder, you can violate Baal Ta'achar, so you say the same thing. By a Nazir, you can also violate Baal Ta'achar. So there's nothing unique regarding the din of a Naziros in that regard. So what chidushe? What's a chiddush? Sagda ramino hoyel. V'imar meherine nazir afil min chartzan. The person says, I'm a nazir just from the pits of grapes. Hari nazir lakol. At that moment, he's a nazir for everything. If all he does is say, I'm a nazir just for the pits of the grapes, the din is that he's going to be a nazir for everything. He'll have all the dinim of naziros. So therefore, because of that, Ema lo averle mishum Baal Ta'achar kamash bulan. So hanichal amandi armer ki nazir min chartzan. If a person again makes a nazir says he's a nazir only from the pits of grapes, hari nazir chol, that he's actually a nazir for everything. Let's see why exactly is that a kula. El reish lakish derma ein nazir ad shiyazir mekulan ma'ikol meimar. And here's the Gemara asks this. V'od hay chidish l'chumrahu. Right. So first of all, not everyone holds like this. That there is such a din that if you only make a decoration to aser a certain aspect of Nazirus, that it applies to everything. But the bigger problem is that even if that does work, that means it's a chumrah. That means we're more strict. So why are we learning out from here? The din is that, so therefore you're not going to violate Bal Ta'achar. Put fakert. Maybe for sure you should be violating because it's a chumrah. So we have to come up with a chiddush by nazir, which is actually a kula. You would think that since, let's continue to Daled Mabez, Ve'im gileach al achas mishloshtan yatsa, that if a person would literally shave by one of these three, he's yatsa. So look in Rashi. Now I'm saying it right. Rashi says the nazir chayav shlosh karbanos. We know a nazir has to bring 3 karbanos, an ola, a chatas, a shlamim. As the pasuk, he brings on the pasuk. The imlo havi el chatas. Let's see, he only brings a carbon chatas. Megalech alav hainu chiddush. So that is a great chiddush. Mashin mishar karbanos fahachi ema enu oira bal ta'achar kamashman. So this is how Rashi explains Pashat, that maybe we see this kula when it comes to the din, that as soon as he brings a chatas, at least according to this opinion, it's not so posh, everyone holds like this, but because of this din, so therefore he can be megaleach, which means he's basically it's enough to shave, which is the conclusion of the declaration that you're not a nazir. So, but all he did was bring 1 carbon, he didn't bring it all. Nonetheless, even though he didn't complete it, nonetheless it's still enough to again to shave. So therefore we see it's a kula. So too when it comes to Bal Ta'achar, maybe there's no din Bal Ta'achar. So the chiddush is, that's why we need the drasha to say no, you are chayav Bal Ta'achar by Naziris. V'yiboy say my chidushe. So that could be one chiddush l'kula. A second is mishulam dul matfisu b'neder, because we said that it's not matvis when it comes to a neder. What is that? So he said, because when it comes to a nazir, if you say I am a nazir and I want to bring a chatas, that doesn't work. So we ask the question though, so when it comes to chatas chaylev, it's the same thing. Now chatas chaylev ka'asil kapara, because when it comes to chatas chaylev, you're bringing it because there is some element of kapara. You're bringing it for something. Chatas nazir l'mayasya. But when it comes to chatas nazir, you're bringing it for nothing, right? So it's not the same thing. You can't compare chatas chaylev, which its purpose is to achieve kapara, as opposed to chatas nazir, in which that is, which is not. So look at the Ran, actually going back to Daled Amud Aleph, mishum hachi afagav deis bakula de'enu yochel atvisa b'neder. So even though there's a kula there, kivan de mitzvah havia l'chaprulov, it is a mitzvah to bring it to achieve atonement. Dinhu shiavru Bal Ta'achar. That's why there's a din Bal Ta'achar by neder. Avol chatas nazir is bakula de'en matvisa b'neder v'lo mitzar b'midi de'leikum l'ha Bal Ta'achar. It doesn't really accomplish anything. You're doing it, but at that point you're not like doing a mitzvah, or you're not achieving any kapara by bringing a chatas by a nazir, so it's not the same thing. And that's how we understand the next piece of the Gemara, and going back to Daled Mabez. V'hari chatas yoledes to asil kapara b'avol mishum Bal Ta'achar. So you can say the question by chatas yoledes, because that's not for kapara, but nonetheless, if you don't bring it, you're over Bal Ta'achar. No, hayi kashari lo lamechel b'kodshim. So it does also have a purpose, as we see in the top Ran, k'dechsev v'chipro leha koyin v'toharu l'achilos kodshim mitzvahi k'goyin achilos psachim da'isha nami m'chayva. So a woman needs to eat a carbon pesach. So the din is that you can only eat it when you're tahar. So therefore she needs to be able to bring a chatas yoledes in order to be able to eat kodshim. So therefore it does serve a purpose in that regard. So therefore, it makes sense you can be over Baal Ta'acher, because you're pushing off doing a mitzvah, pushing off a kapara. But over here, you're not pushing off a kapara or a mitzvah when it comes to Chatas Nazir. Okay. Let's look at question 9. Ma chidish de parshas Nazir de mishum hachi itzrach kra miyuchid l'Baal Ta'acher l'karbanoisav. So either the ein matfiso b'neder, the ein iser o mitzvah toli b'havasai, which that's really the second answer, but I guess it started off with the first answer. Or the im gilach alachas mashlashtan yatsa hilkachol chamiri. If you would have just brought one carbon, then you could do giluach, which is a kula. Okay. Omar. Uma nedarim ha'av mefer nidre bito. So we said another way to connect nedarim and the nazir to one another is that when it comes to a neder, a father can be made for nidre bito. He can annul his daughter's vows. Ubal made for nidre ishto, as well as a husband could annul his wife's vows. Af naziris av made for naziris bito, ubal made for naziris ishto. So the Gemara asks, "Lamli hakesha? Why do you need a hekesh to learn this out? Teisi b'mamatzinu min nedarim. Why don't you learn out from a mamatzinu? Tolma gabi nedarim hu de mefer." It says, because maybe when it comes to Nedarim, that's where the husband and the father have the ability to annul it. Mishum do isle kitsutsa, because it does not have literally an end. Because a neder could last forever. Avagabi naziris to isle kitsutsa, when it comes to a naziris, which is has a short amount of time, the stam naziris lamid yoim, emelo kamash mulan. You would think maybe that they wouldn't be able to annul it because it's only for 30 days. So we're not going to give them this way of annulling it. But by neder, which is forever, or it could be a long time, so that makes more sense that we're going to be more strict. So let's see the Ran. So mishum deleisli kitzutza hilkach dinhu shiafer shlotit sta'er beves olamus. So we don't want, this could be a permanent problem, so they could annul it. So fret the Ran v'chitema kivanda naziris isba kitzutza. So since Naziris has a set amount of time, Nakash Nami Nedarim Naziris, Venema Stam Nedarim Shloshim Yoim. Why don't we say that just like a Nazir is 30 days and Nedarim is 30 days? So Leisa, the Lashon Neder Koilel Nidre Hektish. We know that when it's a neder, it includes a neder you make regarding hektish, v'nidr iser, as well as v'nidr iser, and also saying that, let's say this piece of bread is aser to me. Givan nidre hektish leis luhu kitzutza shamakdish behema lemizbeach kacholamus. Obviously, when a person is makdish something to the mizbeach, that's permanent. You can't say that's only for 30 days. So nidri iser nami de kavosaihu the shaper dama shun nedarim hadadi. We compare one neder to the next. So therefore, there's no way you can possibly think that it should only be for 30 days. So look at question 10. Amayu yalfina mehekesh nedarim unaziris the stam nedarim shleishim yoim. Straight Ran. Kivan de ashka nidri hekdesh de kedushasan alamis adif lahakesh nedarim hadadi mehekshin l'nazirus. Okay. All right, good. That was question 10. All right, let's continue. Then we'll see these other questions after we finish this stuff. So now the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. So let's look at the language of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah, which gave examples of incomplete phrases, Ha'omer l'chaver mudrani mimcha, morfrashani mimcha, morchakani mimcha. So those are three things which sound a lot alike. That I'm making a neder against you, I'm separating myself from you, I'm distancing myself. And then there's three other statements. Shani oichelcha, shani toimacha, asur menuda nilacha. So these are other ways of saying I'm forbidden to you or to this particular thing. Okay? So, fine. So those are all, again, incomplete phrases. And it mentions three things and three things. The question is, do you have to say both of those statements? You have to choose one of those three and one of those three, or any of those six enough to be chal? So I'm a chaver mudarani b'chul. So I'm a shmul b'kuloin. But when it comes to all of them, ad shiyermer shani oicholcha, shani toyim. In other words, you actually have to say both statements. So says the Ran, b'kulon dahainu mudrani meforshani merchukani demasnisin ad shiomer kloimer demasnisin chadakatani. It's one thing. V'ashini oichel, that I will eat amudrani meforshani koi. It's going back on. You have to say one of those three statements and then continue saying sheni oichel, etc. Dilav hachi lo mashma iser klal. If you only said just the top three things or the bottom three things, nothing. But feel yad she'en mochiach lo havi. It's not even considered to be a yad she'en mochiach. It's going to be such an indirect, so far off that it's so unclear what you mean, and therefore it's not considered to be enough that the neder will be chal. Fine. So Meisvei, the Gemara is not so sure about that, and he asks the question: Mudrani mimcha, meforshani mimcha, meruchakani mimcha, harizeh aser. So it just says right off the bat, if you say any of these three statements, then that neder works, which is mashma that each one is separate, and that because we can show this, furthermore, shani oichelcha, shani toimlecha, harizeh aser. It's clear that just saying one of those two phrases is enough. So hachitani. So this is how we understand this. Ba'oimer for b'mendim or amurim. Ba'oimer shani oichelcha, shani toimlecha. Only when you actually say them together, that's when it is. Aibosani ibcha. What do you mean? The Mishnah, we learned it, the Brisa, actually it's the other way around. Shani oichelcha, shani toimlecha, aser. Mudrani mimcha, meforshani mimcha, merchakani mimcha, harizeh aser. So tani hachi. This is how you're supposed to read it. The kvar omer mudrani, and we already mentioned mudrani. So yihachi hainu reisha. Ba'od aser lamuli lamisni. Again, why does it repeat it? The fact that it's repeated gives the impression that each one separately is enough to aser. El omer Shmuel. So Shmuel, we're going to just touch upon the surface of this, but at least get one piece. Taima di omer shani oichelcha shani taimacha hu aser v'chaver mutter. If you said one of these statements, if all you did was say shani oichelcha, that at least is enough that the person who makes the neder will become aser. However, v'chavero mutter. However, literally his friends, namely the object of the neder, will still remain mutter. As we continue to Hem and Aleph, Abul Aimer Mudrani Hemach L'chude. But if let's say but if you only said Mudrani Hemach L'chude alone, Shneim Asurin, then they'll both be Aser. Ki Hadi Yom Rabbi Yosef Ram Chanina Mudrani Himenu Hemach Shneim Asurin. Okay, so let's look at the Ran. The Ran says as follows. So the Ran says, Kloimer, El Hachim Shmuel. Devadai Shmuel Gufam Moide, he admits, the Bahach Masnisa Mili Katani, the Cholchad Mitzer. You have to say that there's some Isser of saying just one of the two statements, because that's how it's written. It says the language of Aser. It says it separately. El Miu Koimer de Masnisa, our Mishnah, Chadakatani. Our Mishnah is talking about one thing. De'i mili katani, because if they were separated, hechitani b'chad aser delo shavu, right? It only says one time over there, one time aser. So therefore, masnisin vadi chadakatani. Our Mishnah is talking about that it's just one thing. So our Mishnah gives the impression that you have to say both statements, which is what Shmuel's pointing out. But this Bryson says, Aser, you're right. There are some times that even if you only make one statement, that's enough to Aser as well. So let's look at the top round over here. Diam Rabbi Yosef Chanina, Mudrani Himach Shneim Asurin. Nira be'enai hachi taima demashma mudrani u'nechasai mimcha. When you say that, you're not just asering yourself, but also my possessions. U'menechasecha hilka chivan b'chlal ani havi nechasim al karcha chaver nami aser boy. Okay, so it must be it's also going on the nechasim as well. Okay, so it depends. Sometimes you're right. Sometimes when you make a statement, if you even make an individual statement, there will still be an isser upon you. But the question is, will there also be an isser also on others? So it's, again, totally on that, whether you say both or you say one, but regarding the actual prohibition of on yourself, that certainly will take place. Again, the Gemara is going to continue on this thought process, but at least that's the beginning over there. So let's look at there's a couple of questions over here. TA 9. Nazir v'hu beveis hakvaros, ezel lav hu oiver chutz milavin de tuma, uma yolaf Rav Ashi b'chidish zeh. So let's see what I wrote over here. This is TA 9. Okay. So I wrote, he misses out on his Naziris Batahara. So the same din should be true of a Stam Nazir that later becomes Tameh to violate Baal Ta'acher, but the Gemara brought a machlokas whether it's Chal or whether he gets Malchus. Okay. It's a very hard question to really understand what is being asked. TB 10. Madua I efshar limud hafaras nazirus ta'av ubal b'mamatzinu b'medarim. Why can't you learn it out from a mamatzinu? So we end up saying, because, and this is straight Gemara, because neder ein lahem kitzutza, has no set time. So it makes sense he could be made for it, because otherwise it's going to cause problems in the family forever. Mashkin nazirus, which is only for 30 days, so therefore you would think that maybe the husband or the father doesn't have a right to annul such a nazirus, kamash malon, that they can do that as well. Adkan.